Would I be correct in saying, A, Hezbollah is far from defeated, and B, it remains an effective fighting force?
Yes, I think that's accurate. It is far from being defeated, and it remains an effective fighting force, notwithstanding the fact that it has suffered unprecedented losses. The assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah in particular was a very huge loss. There's no denying that, but it could end up strategically backfiring for the Israelis. What I mean by that is that those who were not necessarily active members of Hezbollah but supported the movement, due to their immense love for Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, they could now be motivated to join Hezbollah and become active members because they want to seek revenge against Israel. So strategically speaking, not tactically, strategically speaking, this might have been a big misstep for Benjamin Netanyahu.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. With Israeli airstrikes on Beirut and land incursions into the Lebanon continuing and even escalating, we ask today, what are conditions like for the Lebanese people in Beirut? How do they view Hezbollah? Could Iran now play a bigger role in Lebanon? And what about Lebanon itself? What sort of future does the country seem to face? Those are the issues I shall raise today with the well-known Lebanese political and security affairs analyst Ali Rizk. Mr. Rizk joins us from Beirut. Mr. Rizk, you're speaking to us from your home in Beirut, which is a 10 or 15 minutes drive from Dahia, where the headquarters of Hezbollah are located. What have the last 24 hours been like? I gather the bombing, the destruction of buildings, and the killing of innocent civilians continues relentlessly every single day.
Actually, last night was a bit easier than the previous nights when it comes to the intensity of the Israeli bombardment, but Israel is continuing with its bombing, targeting civilian areas, saying that there are Hezbollah weapons stored in these areas, although this is denied by many. But generally speaking, the Lebanese people are suffering immensely. We have over 1 million displaced. People have resorted to shelters in schools, some in other places. In many houses, you have around 20 people crowded in a 2-room or 3-room house. So we do have some immense suffering which is taking place. But interestingly, that has not affected the morale of those who support Hezbollah. On the contrary, the support of Hezbollah has increased. I'm speaking about those who originally support the party. This hasn't affected their morale, maybe in a way which Israel had wished for. But, there is, as I said, immense suffering. And you have to remember that Lebanon, even before the war, was in a dire situation economically, a very, very difficult situation. The economy was in tatters. A lot of people were unemployed. And this only increases that suffering. This is why the Lebanese government has called for emergency aid for the country.
Now, you're in a city which is constantly under threat of Israeli bombs, and I presume you're always scared or worried that something could happen to you at any time. What does it feel like to live in such circumstances?
Luckily, the area I live in is not particularly dangerous compared to others, but you're always in a state of fear, if not for yourself, of the people who you know. And, a state of war. And you never know when the Israelis might expand their bombing campaign to strike areas which it has not yet hit. And in this latest round of hostilities, the Israelis have struck areas which they never hit before. For example, areas in eastern Beirut, which were never subject to any bombardment in the July 2006 war, they've been hit this time. Certain villages also outside Beirut, which were never hit, have been hit this time. The north of Lebanon has also been struck. So you can never feel reassured 100%, particularly when you're facing such an enemy like Israel, and particularly with this current Israeli government.
Tell me, How dramatically has life changed for people in Beirut over the last 2, 3 weeks when the Israeli airstrikes first started? I take it for many people, the existence we are going through today is nothing compared to what it used to be.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I lost you for a second.
Sure. I was saying, how dramatically has life changed during the last 2, 3 weeks for people in Beirut after the Israeli strikes began?
Well, it has changed to a very large degree. Many people displaced. Dahiya, southern Beirut, is known to be a very densely populated area. And basically now it's a ghost town. Nobody's there. Some of the people, by the way, I forgot to mention this. Some of the people, a lot of them, not some of them, are now living on the streets in downtown Beirut, in the eastern suburbs, which are relatively more safer. So people's lives have been turned upside down. I know personally some people who left for Australia via Cyprus due to this situation, people who have recently arrived to Lebanon, by the way, and who had the plan to settle down. So it has drastically changed many people's lives.
Now, the Israelis claim that Lebanese civilians have been killed because Hezbollah has embedded itself in civilian areas and that effectively it is using Lebanese civilians as human shields. Is that true?
I don't believe this is true, no, and I think that this is the same Israeli mantra which we hear time and again, whether it be regarding Hamas in Gaza or regarding Hezbollah in Lebanon. The attempts to demonize Hezbollah, one of the aims behind this might be to turn the population of the party against the party itself. If that is one of the aims, I think that it has failed miserably. Hezbollah, even when it used to target Israeli spies or Lebanese who used to work for the Israelis, like the Lahad army, if you know those, that army used to operate in South Lebanon when South Lebanon was still under Israeli occupation. It was basically a group of Lebanese soldiers who worked for the Israeli military as spies, as agents. When Hezbollah used to kill some of those people, it always took care not to kill them whilst they were with their families, children and wives, in order not for there not to be any collateral damage, in order for their family members not to be killed. So they would always wait for the opportunity to kill these agents whilst they were alone. So with that in mind, I find it hard to believe that Hezbollah would endanger its own civilian population, its own supporters. That would actually contradict Hezbollah strategically because it would undermine Hezbollah's support. So not only would that be inhumane, strategically it would be unwise. And so I find it very unlikely that Hezbollah would do that.
So every time Lebanese civilians have been killed, it's not because Hezbollah has embedded itself in civilian areas, it's because the Israelis have been directly targeting Lebanese civilians.
Yes, and this is not something unusual in the Israeli military modus operandi. You saw what happened in Gaza, you saw what happened in Lebanon in July 2006. I was here also in July 2006, and they targeted Beirut's airport, they targeted bridges, trying to disconnect Lebanese areas from one another, and they deliberately targeted civilians. I also like to remind you of the Qana massacre, which occurred in April 1996. A UN shelter was hit then. The Israelis said it was by accident. Time and time again, they speak about accidents when they kill civilians, not just Lebanese civilians, but civilians in general. So this is not a surprise for the Israelis to behave in such a manner. It's part of the Israeli military doctrine, I think, and it also relates to the Israeli sense of superiority. Remember that the Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, early on in the war on Gaza, referred to the inhabitants of Gaza as being human animals. And the Zionist ideology does have this supremacist mindset to it, whereby all others are deemed to be lower level human beings, and therefore it sanctions the killing of all the other segments, all the other peoples. That is the Israeli ideology and the Israeli, I won't say Israel, the Zionist ideology, and also the doctrine of the Israeli military.
Now, on Tuesday evening, Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke to the Lebanese people. He called on the Lebanese to rise up against Hezbollah, and he said that if they didn't, Beirut could face the same destruction that Gaza has suffered. What response has there been in Beirut and in Lebanon to that call from the Israeli Prime Minister?
Well, of course, I haven't been in touch with everyone in Beirut. I can speak from a small sample, which I know. The morale or the support of the resistance of Hezbollah has not decreased in any way whatsoever, whatever be the remarks of Netanyahu. I think that Netanyahu is trying to capitalize on the current situation. He thinks that Hezbollah has been severely weakened. Now, Hezbollah might have been weakened. We can't deny that. It has suffered some unprecedented heavy blows. But I think that any Israeli attempts to try and break the morale or to undermine the support of Hezbollah, I think such efforts are doomed to failure. If anything, I think that Hezbollah's support is going to increase, particularly following the assassination of its Secretary General, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. Because Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah was a person who enjoyed immense popularity, not just from Hezbollah members, but from the supporters of Hezbollah who weren't actually active members in the movement. Now, his death, I believe, is going to further increase the support of Hezbollah, just a way to prove to the Israelis that their aims have not been achieved. So I think that such remarks and such messages delivered by Benjamin Netanyahu will not succeed in achieving the goals of cutting off or undermining the support of Hezbollah.
Now, Lebanon is a country of many communities. And often in the past, those communities have had serious differences with each other. You fought a civil war that lasted for over a decade. You have Maronites, you have Sunnis and Shias, you have the Druze. How do they view Hezbollah in the present circumstances? Is, at times, Western papers are reporting distrust of Hezbollah, perhaps even dislike of Hezbollah, growing from other non-Shia communities?
When we talk about the stance towards, or the stances towards Hezbollah in Lebanon, I'm not sure we can use the religious or categorize it religiously. I think you have to focus on the political parties. Now, there are some Christian political parties that support Hezbollah. There are some Christian political parties that don't support Hezbollah. One interesting thing which has happened in this current round of hostilities is the Sunni Shia unity. Given that the inhabitants of Gaza are Sunnis and Hezbollah supported Gaza, that has repaired to a large degree the damage which was caused previously. If you recall, during the war on Syria, there was Sunni hatred towards Hezbollah because many of the Sunnis believed that Hezbollah was involved in the oppression or actions being taken against Sunnis in Syria. Now, regardless of whether or not that is true, many Sunnis did have that perspective, and that led to a lot of sectarian tension within the country. What's happened now is that due to the support of Gaza, the Sunnis in Gaza, I have to mention this in order to explain, I have to focus on this sectarian issue. Due to that, this sectarianism has greatly declined. And you even have some Lebanese Sunni groups that have joined Hezbollah in carrying out cross-border operations against Israel. One of these groups is the Lebanese Jama'a al-Islamiyya. It's a Sunni group which used to be in a state of hostility with Hezbollah, but now the two are the best of friends. So due to this, we can say that there is, generally speaking, Sunni Shia unity, and that we don't have that Sunni hostility towards Hezbollah. You mentioned the Druze. The main Druze leader in Lebanon, Walid Jumblatt, has also come out very much in support of Hezbollah. And I think this also relates to the central.
Oh dear, the power, it seems, has gone. Hopefully, you'll be back with us soon. We lost you for a while, Mr. Rizk, but fortunately, you're back. Do you want to add to your last answer before the power cut off?
As I was saying, the Lebanese Druze leader, for example, Walid Jumblatt, has come out very much in support of Hezbollah. So the centrality of the Palestinian cause, the centrality of Gaza, I think, has prevented any undermining of Hezbollah domestically. People now, the main politicians, the main political parties, they will not go ahead and speak out against Hezbollah or criticize Hezbollah Because Hezbollah stood with the people of Gaza who were subject to all of these atrocities, and this relates to the centrality of the Palestinian cause. One other point I'll mention is that the former Lebanese Premier Saad Hariri, who is the main Sunni Lebanese politician, he also came out and condemned the Israeli assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. And I think that he did that being aware that doing anything else coming out against Hezbollah under the current circumstances would be very unpopular in the Sunni street. So domestically, I think that Hezbollah doesn't have anything to fear, although, as I said, it has been weakened to a significant degree. Not completely, it's still fighting Israel heavily on the ground, but we do have a big change at the leadership level. There was a severe undermining at the leadership level.
Thank you very much for that answer, Mr. Rizk, because it clearly shows that what the Western press is suggesting, and at times even reporting, that antipathy for Hezbollah has grown amongst different Lebanese community, is not true. It's not uniformly the case. You've suggested very good reasons why Sunnis, Christians, as well as the Druze continue to support Hezbollah. Let me then ask you a couple of specific questions about Hezbollah itself. During the last 3 weeks, it hasn't just lost its Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah, but Western papers report that perhaps some 10 or 15 top commanders have also been killed, and there are widespread reports that Hashim Safieddin, who was said to be Nasrallah's successor, is missing, presumed dead. So first, let me ask you, how badly politically damaged is the leadership of Hezbollah? How seriously is it affected by these deaths?
Look, there's no denying the fact that it has been affected. These were some very, very heavy blows. Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah presided over Hezbollah for 32 years. It was during this period that Hezbollah was in its golden era. It forced the Israelis to withdraw in 2000, sorry. It fought Israel to a standstill. Many people believe it even defeated Israel in 2006. It intervened in Syria successfully. As well, it became a regional force, all of this under the leadership of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. So this was a very big loss. And you also mentioned the other commanders. You had the detonation of the Pages, which took thousands of fighters out of combat. This is an intelligence and security war which is unprecedented, which was waged by Israel. And indeed, Israel does have the upper hand when it comes to this kind of warfare. So Hezbollah has been damaged, but if you notice on the ground in the past few days, the Israelis have suffered some heavy losses. There were 8 soldiers who were killed in one day as they tried to enter Lebanese territory. So on the ground, this is where Hezbollah's strength lies. It is still a force to be reckoned with. And we did see 2 speeches from Hezbollah's deputy leader, Sheikh Naim Qasim. Now, his most recent speech, which was 2 days ago, he appeared in that speech to be notably more confident than he was in the earlier speech, which was shortly after the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. Iran also carried out its operation against Israel. I think that was a morale boost for Hezbollah. So there have been some developments which maybe serve to slightly improve Hezbollah's situation.
Israel has repeatedly claimed that they've downgraded Hezbollah's stock of weapons. Yet every single day, Hezbollah is firing missiles into central Israel. Frequently, it's targeting Tel Aviv. Often, it's targeting Haifa. Yesterday, in fact, something like 40 rockets were fired at the port Haifa. Does this mean Hezbollah's formidable stock of rockets and missiles remains more or less intact?
More or less, I think that's the key term, more or less. It is more or less intact. It's increased its firepower, as you mentioned. Importantly, this also shows that its command and control structure hasn't been severely weakened or disrupted as a result of these assassinations and as a result of this technological security war. And I think that the Israelis had been hoping otherwise. I think what the Israelis hoped for was that after the detonation of the Pages, the assassination of senior commanders, the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, I think what they had hoped for was that all of this would make it easier to launch a ground invasion and to greatly weaken the capabilities of Hezbollah. And I think they've been somewhat surprised by how flexible or how Hezbollah has shown that it's still a fighting force that can pose a real challenge for the Israeli side. The Israelis were in a hurry. If you notice, quickly after these assassinations, they quickly went ahead and wanted to go ahead with their ground invasion in order to seize the momentum. But I think that momentum, which they had achieved and which culminated with the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, has now been somewhat curtailed, particularly with the operation which was launched by Iran.
Tell me about the land incursions into Lebanon. Israel has acknowledged that in the last 10 days, 11 or 12 of its soldiers have been killed. 8, as you pointed out, were killed on one day alone. Yesterday, apparently, an Israeli flag was raised temporarily at a Lebanese village called Maroun el Ras, but Hezbollah ensured that it was taken down pretty quickly. What more can you tell me about these land incursions? Are they achieving anything of substance and meaning, or are they just symbolic?
From what I can tell, no, they aren't achieving anything of substance or meaning. I spoke, by the way, to an official in the UNIFIL forces, the United Nations peacekeeping forces in South Lebanon, just immediately after Israel said it started its attempts for a ground incursion. Now, what the Israelis had been saying is that they entered Lebanese territory. What this official told me is that they entered just maybe a few hundred meters. It was not really an invasion of Lebanese territory in the real sense. And this wasn't a Hezbollah official who was talking. This was a United Nations official. And so I'm talking about neutral voices. So the Israelis maybe have it in their interest to try and show that their momentum is continuing. As I said, they had achieved some significant tactical gains. And by saying that they were able to plant the flag, now they did plant the flag on that location in Maroun al-Ras, but that's an area very close to the border. And as you just mentioned, that they were forced to leave immediately. So they're focusing, I think, on these achievements for show, not real achievements, but trying to show that they're making progress in order to give the impression that that momentum which they achieved with the assassinations is continuing on the ground.
So to sum up this part of the interview where we're talking about Hezbollah, would I be correct in saying, A, Hezbollah is far from defeated, and B, it remains an effective fighting force?
Yes, I think that's accurate. It is far from being defeated, and it remains an effective fighting force, notwithstanding the fact that it has suffered unprecedented losses. The assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah in particular was a very huge loss. There's no denying that, but it could end up strategically backfiring for the Israelis. What I mean by that is that those who were not necessarily active members of Hezbollah, but supported the movement, due to their immense love for Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, they could now be motivated to join Hezbollah and become active members because they want to seek revenge against Israel. So strategically speaking, not tactically, strategically speaking, this might have been a big misstep for Benjamin Netanyahu.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
Let's come briefly to Iran. Benjamin Netanyahu has promised to pay Iran back for the October 1st missile attack, but so far that hasn't happened. What is your sense of what Israel will seek to do. There's a lot of speculation that Israel might try to take out Iran's nuclear installations, or it might attack Iran's oil and gas infrastructure, even though it seems Biden has advised against doing either. Do you believe that those are the likely targets for Israel?
I think that we can't rule out anything. I think that the nuclear installation, a strike on the nuclear sites, is relatively unlikely. Now, on the oil fields, that might happen. An attempt to damage infrastructure, that is possible. I think that is something which is concerning the Americans, especially as we approach the elections, and that could have a big impact on the price of global oil, on the global oil market, particularly if Iran were to respond. Because if you look at the Iranian statements, Iranian officials have warned Israel that should they launch an attack, Iran is going to target their own economic infrastructure. And presumably that would include Israeli offshore gas installations or gas reserves. So this could have a big impact worldwide on the global oil market, the global energy market. And imagine what that could do to the Democratic Party's chances for retaining the White House. When you talk about an Israeli attack on Iran or on the Iranian-Israeli hostilities, if you like, I think an important factor to always focus on is the United States, because I think that this, in particular, Iran more than the other arena, up and they're hesitant about what the Israelis could do, but unfortunately, the Americans, they haven't said that Israel should not attack Iran. They've spoken about how, in what way, a narrow attack. They haven't set a red line saying don't attack Iran. And I think that encourages Netanyahu to go on these adventures. At the same time, Joe Biden has been very weak and timid and not putting real pressure on Netanyahu. All of these factors encourage Netanyahu more and more, I think, to go ahead with the escalation. So an attack on Iran can't be ruled out. But as you said, it's been a few days now and the Israelis haven't taken any action. Does this mean that the Americans, for a change, are putting some real pressures on the Israelis, saying that we won't take part in any offensive or dangerous military action? We have to wait and see. I think the next few days might reveal.
As you outline what Iran might do in response to any action that Israel takes, the question is, will Iran succeed in doing it effectively? And the reason I ask that is because neither the April attack on Israel nor the 1st October attack did major damage. So if there is a third time when Iran is promising a crushing response, can it be different to the first two? Can it be more successful than the first two?
I think that the second attack, the October attack, was more successful than the Israelis revealed. Now, the Iranians say that 90% of the targets were hit. We don't know. The Israelis say that they successfully thwarted. It's not clear what exactly happened, how effective it was. But I heard, for example, people from the International Crisis Group who said that the attack probably did more damage than the Israelis are revealing. At the same time, there was much less advance notice which was given to the Israelis this time compared to the April attack. They had less time to put the preparations in place to thwart that operation. Now, regarding a new attack, how successful will that be? I think that if Iran finds itself to have nothing to lose, meaning should it face an existential threat, I think it may very well unleash all its firepower. And that could put Israel in severe danger. Even if America comes and joins forces with Israel, America is not immune to that danger itself. Yes, America remains the superpower, that's right. But that doesn't mean that Iran can't inflict some heavy damage even on the Americans, targeting some of the bases, for example, present in the region. So I think that Iran can launch an effective attack should it decide that such an effective attack is in its interests. The restraint which was shown by Iran previously in the previous two attacks, I think it's linked to Iran's self-interest. You have to remember that Iran, it is anti-Israel, it is anti-American, but at the same time, it's a very rational pragmatic actor. So any actions it takes, I think, it includes a high level of pragmatism and rationality.
Is there any possibility in the present circumstances, as you see them, of Iran getting involved on the side of Hezbollah within the Lebanon? Or do you think that's more or less completely unlikely?
Look, Iran sends military advisors to Lebanon in 2006, and also now I would presume, I don't have any information, I would presume that there are advisors from the Revolutionary Guards. For Iran to get actively involved by sending an army, I think that unlikely now. Should Hezbollah, doesn't seem to be the case now, but should that change, should Israeli commandos come in and Hezbollah faces an existential threat, I think that Iran will have no choice but to intervene much more heavily, because Iran has a special relationship with Hezbollah. It can't be compared to Iran's relationship with anyone else in the axis of resistance, neither the Houthis in Yemen, nor Hamas, nor the Iraqi groups. Iran Hezbollah ties are in a league of their own. Many people like to talk about the special relationship between America and Israel. I talk about the special relationship between Iran and Hezbollah. And so an important equation comes here. Which relationship is more special? Is the Iranian-Hezbollah relationship more special, or is the American-Israeli relationship more special? If they are equally special, that would mean you're going to have an American-Iranian confrontation take place in case of more escalation between Israel and Hezbollah, if you get what I mean.
Absolutely. For a moment in between that answer, we lost you. So let me clarify that what we understood is correct. What you're saying is normally Iran has not sent its army into the Lebanon, but if Israeli commandos in sufficiently large numbers were to enter and invade the Lebanon, Iran might then certainly consider sending its army in support of Hezbollah. Is that what you said?
Iran will increase its support. Now, will it send an army? I'm not sure if it's going to send an army, but it's going to get more involved. It might unleash much more severe rocket attacks, for example, like the one which we saw in October. Another point which I was making was that Iran-Hezbollah ties, there's a special relationship between Iran and Hezbollah, which can't be compared to Iran's relationship with Hamas or with some Iraqi groups or with the Houthis in Yemen. The Iranian-Hezbollah relationship is very special. And I like to compare it to the special relationship which exists between America and Israel, because the Americans always talk about a special relationship between them and the Israelis. So what we have here is you have two special relationships, America-Israel on the one hand, Iran-Hezbollah on the other. Which relationship is more special? Will the Americans feel that their relationship with Israel is so special that they're going to be forced to enter a war against Iran? So, as I said, if you get what I'm saying, this special relationship issue might lead to that regional war, which many people are fearing.
Thank you very much for repeating that, Dr. Rizk. Two last questions about your country, Lebanon, before I end the interview. Up till now, since the start of the Israeli airstrikes, up to perhaps 1,400 people have been killed, maybe 1.2 or 1.3 million displaced. For a country with a population of around 5.5 million, what does that toll mean?
It means immense suffering. It means that Lebanon doesn't have the resources to deal with this situation. It's in dire need of aid from international organizations. And as I was telling you before, senior Lebanese government officials have been calling for aid to come in, emergency aid. Lebanon needs the support, all the support it can get. So, unfortunately, I'm not sure how much Lebanon can withstand this situation of the displaced, of the hospitals. Some of the hospitals, from what I've heard, are no longer running. So it means, I think, a catastrophe which we haven't seen before. It can't be compared. 2006, I think, was much easier than the situation now.
You actually meant to use that word. Lebanon faces a catastrophe.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
They say when elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers. Would I be right in saying Lebanon is the grass in the fight between Israel and Hezbollah? And in that event, how do you see Lebanon's future?
I wouldn't say that. No, I think that separates between Lebanon and Hezbollah. And I think we can't separate between Lebanon and Hezbollah. Contrary to what many people say, Hezbollah is not an Iranian proxy. Hezbollah is a resistance group which came into existence due to the Israeli excesses, due to the Israeli misbehavior, if you like, or hostile nature. A lot of people support Hezbollah, and in the end, the Lebanese army, unfortunately, isn't allowed to receive weapons which would qualify it to stand up to Israel. The Americans maintain their policy of providing Israel with the qualitative edge in military. And so the only option or the only alternative left for Lebanon to defend against Israel would be a resistance like Hezbollah. So I like to think of Hezbollah as being a legitimate self-defense force for Lebanon, representing Lebanon itself, not representing other parties, although Lebanon does have, or Hezbollah, sorry, does have good ties with Iran. There's no denying that. That doesn't, however, diminish how Lebanese the group is.
But what about the future of Lebanon as a country, faced with this terrible constant threat from Israel?
Well, I think that this is going to be an ongoing struggle as long as Israel continues to exist. Lebanon is going to continue to confront these challenges. The challenges for Lebanon do not stem from Hezbollah. The challenges from Lebanon stem from Israeli hostility. You have the Israelis. They focus on their own ideological goals. They are expansionist. We all know that they have expansionist aims, particularly this government, this right-wing fascist government, which I think poses a threat to mankind as a whole. So as long as you have Israel, and particularly as long as you have Israel shifting more and more to the right and having fascist governments, the more this danger is going to continue. And I think that all countries of the world are called upon to take a stance and to say enough is enough to the Israelis.
Mr. Rizk, thank you very much for this interview, and in particular for the time you've given me. We'll make up for the fact that we lost you in between by joining the two bits together, but I don't think the audience has lost anything of substance from your answers. I'm deeply grateful to you. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.